The first thing he noticed wasn't the billion-dollar mansion or the fleet of luxury, cars waiting behind the iron gates. It was the little girl standing alone beneath a giant oak tree, clutching a faded stuffed dolphin with tears silently rolling down her cheeks. Before anyone could stop him, the former Navy SEAL was already running toward her, guided by the same instinct that had once carried him through impossible missions. He had survived war, buried his wife, and spent years raising his son alone. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the moment that one frightened child would quietly change. Every future he thought had already been written. If stories about kindness, courage, and second chances resonate with you, we hope this one gives you something meaningful to reflect on and share with someone who might need it today. Ethan Carter had never imagined he would agree to a blind date after leaving the Navy SEALs. With scars that reached far deeper than the ones visible on his body, he devoted every waking hour to raising his 8-year-old son, Noah. His wife had passed away after a sudden illness only months after Ethan returned from his final deployment. Since then, every day had become a careful balancing act between construction work, school pickups, homework, and making sure Noah never felt alone. There were nights Ethan quietly skipped dinner so Noah could have seconds without worrying about the grocery bill. Pride had never mattered to him. His son's smile was worth every sacrifice. His closest friend insisted he deserved another chance at happiness and secretly arranged a dinner with Victoria Hayes, a billionaire businesswoman whose charitable foundation had transformed children's hospitals across the country. Ethan nearly canceled when he learned who she was. He owned 2 pairs of jeans, drove an aging pickup truck, and still lived in the modest family home filled with memories of his late wife. He believed people like Victoria existed in magazines, not across a dinner table. Victoria almost canceled as well. Years of wealth had surrounded her with people who admired her fortune instead of her heart. After losing her husband in a private plane crash, she focused entirely on raising her daughter, Lily, while building a company that employed thousands. Success filled every newspaper headline, but it never filled the empty chair at her dining table. The evening began awkwardly. Expensive chandeliers reflected against polished marble floors, while Ethan felt painfully out of place. He worried about saying the wrong thing or embarrassing himself. Yet Victoria noticed something rare almost immediately. He spoke far more about Noah than about himself. Every accomplishment he mentioned belonged to his son. Every dream he described centered on giving the boy a better future. Money never entered the conversation unless it involved stretching. Enough of it to buy school supplies or replace worn-out sneakers. Halfway through dinner, a housekeeper quietly informed Victoria that Lily had disappeared into the garden after becoming upset. Victoria excused herself, but Ethan was already outside. Years of military training had sharpened his awareness, yet it was fatherhood that helped him find the frightened little girl beneath the oak tree. Lily wasn't crying because of scraped knees or childish fears. She believed every adult who entered her mother's life eventually disappeared. Her father never came home. Caregivers left for better jobs. Friends moved away. She had convinced herself that everyone eventually abandoned her. Ethan didn't try to solve her sadness with promises. He simply sat nearby, keeping enough distance to let her feel safe. The silence reminded him of Noah after his mother's funeral, when words had only made grief heavier. Sometimes being present spoke louder than anything else. From the window, Victoria watched a stranger comfort her daughter without asking for attention or praise. She realized this was the first time in years Lily had stopped crying beside someone she had only just met. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Victoria met again. Not in expensive restaurants, but at community parks, school events, and children's museums where Noah and Lily slowly became friends. Noah taught Lily how to fly a kite. Lily convinced Noah to paint colorful seashells instead of collecting them. Their laughter filled spaces that had been painfully quiet in both families for years. Still, Ethan struggled with insecurity. Every newspaper celebrated Victoria's financial success, while he wondered whether fixing broken roofs for a living made him unworthy of standing beside her. He worried the world would assume he was chasing her wealth instead of her heart. Quietly, he began pulling away. Victoria noticed the distance growing. She discovered through one of her foundation volunteers that Ethan had anonymously donated hundreds of hours helping veterans repair damaged homes after storms. He never accepted recognition. He simply believed service didn't end when the uniform came off. That discovery changed everything. She understood his greatest wealth had never been measured in dollars. It was measured in loyalty, humility, sacrifice, and the quiet strength to keep loving after unimaginable loss. One rainy afternoon, both families gathered at the local beach where Ethan had promised to help Noah finally overcome his fear of deep water. Unexpectedly, Lily reached for Ethan's hand before stepping toward the waves. Noah smiled instead of feeling jealous. Somehow, without anyone planning it, the two children had already begun seeing themselves as brother and sister. Victoria watched the four footprints appearing together in the wet sand. For years, she had searched for someone extraordinary. She finally realized extraordinary wasn't found in headlines or fortunes. It lived inside ordinary acts of compassion repeated every single day. Months later, Ethan didn't move into a mansion because of money. Victoria didn't ask him to change who he was. Instead, they built a home where both children felt safe enough to laugh again. Ethan continued volunteering with veterans. Victoria expanded her foundation to support military families, inspired by the quiet sacrifices she had witnessed firsthand. The greatest miracle wasn't that a struggling single father met a billionaire. It was that two broken families discovered, healing in each other when neither believed. Happiness was still possible. Before this story ends, we'd love to know, what do you think was the moment that truly changed their lives? Share your thoughts and reflections. As the sun set over the shoreline, Ethan realized the mission he had spent years searching for had never been another battlefield. It had been protecting two children learning to trust again, and loving a woman who saw his heart long before she noticed his scars. Victoria finally understood that true security wasn't built by wealth, but by finding someone who stayed when life became difficult. Together they proved that second chances often arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary moments that become extraordinary because of love, patience, and kindness. If this story touched your heart, or reminded you that hope can appear when it's least expected, thank you for spending these moments with it. Stories like this remind us that compassion has the power to change lives in ways no amount of money ever can.